Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SuperCoach, mates. Well, we hope you had a great end to the year and a very Merry Christmas. And sorry that we just suddenly died. Unfortunately, life just got in the way, which happens from time to time, and we just didn't have the time to uh, post as regularly as we would have liked. But we're back. We're bigger for 2026. And a couple of weeks ago, we got a early Christmas present with the 2026 Team Picker being opened up for SuperCoach Plus subscribers and Herald Sun and News Corp premium subscribers. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to have a look at the team picker and perhaps have a talk about some players who, we might be tossing up and whatnot. So I am webcamless today. My webcam has gone walkabouts. But as per normal, I am joined by Thomas. How are you going, Thomas?
Yeah, not too bad, Nathan. It's good to be back. As you said, we kind of fell off the face of the earth a little bit in segments last year, but yeah, it was tough to juggle what we had going on in the background to try and upload consistently. Like we were both still playing the game and whatnot from week to week basis, but uploading became a bit too far bridge to cross. But yeah, good to be back, and team pickers up and well for gold subscribers. So yeah, as Nathan said, we're gonna kick things off with picking my side, and I've already picked it off camera, but I've cleared the side, and we're going to go through each kind of pick or a speculative pick essentially, because as I said, when I post this team on Twitter or X, it's going to change, 10,000 times before round one based off preseason news and injuries and whatnot. But it'd be good to have a discussion around some of the players that we can obviously come back to and kind of make a decision when we make the final team. But at the end of the video, I'll also discuss kind of some other things we've got going on, because as you probably would have been aware if you're an avid listener from previous years gone by, Nathan's not really a heavy classic player. He's more your draft guy. So we're going to change things up a little bit in the classic scheme of things, but we'll talk about that as the episode goes on. But to kick things off, as you can see on your screen now, if you're on YouTube, it's a pretty blank screen. It's a fresh team for this year, and we're going to go kick things off with the defenders. So I think for me, the biggest thing from a personal perspective is, I think a lot of the time we look at the team pickers and you think, oh, great, it's a fresh new year, new me kind of outlook, and you kind of go through all the speculative picks. So I think the biggest tip straight off the bat when you are picking your side, obviously you can pick and change and do what you want with it until lockout is opening round. But at the end of the day, I think the more speculative picks you pick, the greater risk that you run of burning trades early on, and that can kind of really screw you up as the season goes on, as I quickly found out in seasons gone by. So I think the more that you can get your picks nailed, the better. And I think if you've got a really good argument to pick a speculative pick, I don't see why not. But I think you really need to make sure that you've got that set in stone before you do pick them. But kicking things off in the defensive line. Sorry, Nathan. I've got three premium defenders. What I'm going to do is going to go kind of line by line. So three defenders, and then we'll have a quick discussion, me and Nathan, what we think of these players, because Nathan obviously hasn't seen my team as of yet.
No, I have not. This is completely new for me.
It's completely fresh for him as well. The first one off the bat is, of course, the most expensive defender, priced at $622K. Nazai Wanganeen-Milera. I think with him, obviously the whole focal point around St Kilda this season is going to be around him, and I know he's had a bit of a hell of a journey in the last kind of 6 months with all the contractual obligations and things that were signed in the last season just gone. But I think with him, I think the nice thing is we saw him play in the midfield straight away when he got that opportunity at the back end of last year. It's not like we haven't seen him play in the midfield at all and we're going, what if he plays full-time mid? We've seen that in action. And I think the really positive thing in comparison, if you directly compare him with Sinclair, who's not in my side at the moment, when Sinclair got tagged, he got tagged quite heavily, and that's when his points got shut down quite dramatically. But Naz, I think when he does get tagged, he just goes straight to the half-back line, and teams don't seem to tag him when he plays that kind of loose behind the ball +1, because he's not as damaging. They tag him when he plays purely mid, but he's dominant wherever he goes. Like you look at the Melbourne game, last year when he was that match winner for that crazy comeback, and he played up forward for chunks of it as well. And he's just, very hard to match up against with his skill set. So Naz is number one off the bat. The second one, it could have gone to a few people, but I think from what I saw with how Port Adelaide went and how they're going to be like this season, I think they're going to have to heavily rely on the likes of Rosie and Butters. And Rosie playing off halfback, he kind of found that newfound role. He didn't look amazing when he was playing midfield, but having that DPP as well was really, really nice. And Rosie, I think if they can really just give him the keys to that half back line, I think you're going to see the best of Rosie, because you saw when he did play his full complement in the half-back line, he really dominated in that position. And the next one is a price down. Just going to make it quicker by typing these players in. Nick Newman's number 3 off the bat, so it jumps down in price. I don't have 3 Uber premiums. Newman's obviously, if you followed our series on Twitter, which is the 12 Days of Christmas SuperCoach discounts thing that I've been posting each day, Nick Newman was on there, I think heavily discounted for what he's capable of. There's obviously a huge risk coming off the ruptured Achilles.
ACL.
ACL. Yeah, so he's one that I think is a big risk coming back. Having done an ACL myself, I know the risk of coming back into footy, but Newman, I think, has a monopoly on that half-back line when he does come back. It's just whether he can come back fully fit, and that's a big if. So he's one that I could, flip to McKercher or someone a bit more pricey if I wanted to. But Newman, I think, has the ability, and if you look at his previous scores when he played a full set of games, he was pretty consistently hitting that ton mark, which for 439k is a bargain, I think, at that price. What are your thoughts, Nathan? I know I haven't managed to squeeze in Dan Houston as much as you'd like me to. What are your thoughts on these 3 defenders in particular?
Yeah, well, I've actually just done a bit of a mini team, obviously off camera because you guys can't see me, but I've actually got Nasiah in there as well. I think Rose is a good pick. I've got Clark in that spot at the minute.
Jordan, Freo Jordan Clark,
who's $500 cheaper.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can go wrong with either of those two. And I've also got Nick Newman as well. Obviously, even though I am a Collingwood supporter, I do go to a lot of Carlton games. I've got a immediate family member who goes for Carlton. And I think they really missed Nick Newman this year. I think they missed his run, his kicking off that half-back flank. So unless, of course, he goes down injured again, I can't see why he won't resume where he was in 2024 when he was one of the top defenders. So I think he's very underpriced for where he can get to.
Yeah, no, it's understandable. And I think, it's a big watch in preseason to see how he holds up from a physical perspective with that injury coming back. But to finish off the defensive line, I guess one thing we'll go pretty brief on is the rookies, because I know me and Nathan haven't paid too much attention to the rookie scene. I've done a little bit of research when picking the side based off some news on X and whatnot with regards to maybe who to pick. But as you probably will quickly realize when you see teams on Twitter and whatnot or Facebook, the rookies will change a million times until basically lock out round 1, because you just don't know whether they're going to get their debut or not. Like, you can obviously base it off previous information or if they've played before, but a lot of the rookies come out the clouds before round 1, and I guess that's the best time to pick them. So I wouldn't put too much emphasis on the rookies. They're more of a placeholder and a kind of gives you a good sense of where your team's at with regards to structure. Because I would say that if you can fit more of the expensive rookies in, that gives you a bit more wriggle room if you do want to upgrade your premiums by bumping them down to a cheaper rookie. But I guess one thing I'd probably strongly wouldn't recommend is just picking all those like 99k rookies or the basement price rookies and then, bolstering up your premiums, because realistically, there's only going to be very few of those basement price rookies that are going to play round 1. But just off the bat there, Zeke Eland, he was a high draft pick. I think it was number 2 or 3, Nath, if I'm not mistaken.
He was pick 2.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays early games. I know it's a tough Gold Coast lineup.
Yeah, definitely early games.
Sam Gridge, I think his name is, from Richmond, if I can get this bloody spelling right. Yeah, Samuel Gridge. I've got a lot of this data off a guy called Nerds for Life on Twitter, so give him a follow. He's got some really good preseason data. Sam Gridge was apparently quite a good standout at preseason training. I know, every coach says they're a preseason standout, but if he can get, I think that the general crux of this conversation is going to be that Richmond and West Coast rookies are going to be quite a popular theme in this team, just because of how young they are and how much youth they're going to blood throughout the season. I think that's going to be a really important theme. I think this next guy, Jacob Farrow, DPP, defensive mid, apparently has, very classy outside player. I think, as with these rookies, as long as they don't play a lockdown role, it's probably one thing that's going to help them a lot. If they can get that half-back role or a midfield role or a high half forward, that's where the points come by. I think the only kind of, deviation in points is when they play that key back or key forward, which they really can struggle at times. And then rounding off the bench, this guy needs no introduction, Josh Gibbs. He just has been struck down by injury after injury. He's still at that rookie price. So I think if you can get him in, he's going to play games regardless and he'll score accordingly. And then Josh Lindsay, I think his name is, from West Coast, has big raps on him. Very clean disposal. And I think West Coast are going to blood a lot of youngsters in that lineup. So that wraps up the defensive line. And we're going to go move to the midfields in a minute, just because there's no real point talking about the rookies. But just straight off the bat here, I'm going to start off by saying I'm not picking Bontempelli to start off with. 700k is a lot of money to pay. I know that he scores for fun. It'll be interesting to see your take on this, Nathan, whether you would start with the Bont or not. But my first player off the bat is Zach Butters. We're going to probably do a bit more of a discussion on the mids because they play so much of a prevalence in our sides, especially the high-end premiers, because at the end of the day, they are the ones that score the most. What are your thoughts, Nathan, on Butters, and what are your thoughts on, obviously, not picking Bont if that's where people want to go? Because to be honest, I haven't seen too many teams that have picked Bontempelli to start with.
Well, I've actually picked Bontempelli and Butters. I just think you can't go wrong with either of them.
Yep.
I think you know what you're going to get, and I think this year, I think Bontempelli missed early games this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he missed a few early games this year.
Yeah.
And I think the lowest he got to was about 600,000. So even if you don't pick him, you're still gonna have him in your final side at some stage, unless of course he gets injured. So my philosophy with that is that I would just rather pick someone like Bontempelli and maybe accept that he might drop 50 or 60k, rather than have to try and find the 600k to get him in at a later stage. I just think it's so much easier to just put him in now and just not have to worry about it. But I can understand why people are doing it. But every year we have this discussion, and I feel like the sides that do well are the ones that just backing those higher priced players to just get the job done. So even though I'm not a big classic player, if I would still pick Bontempelli, if I was, full series, I would just start with him.
Yeah, no, I think you make a really good point. I think last year there was a heavy conversation around Bontempelli and whether people picked him or not. I guess you were duly rewarded with the fact that he really didn't start with a house on fire when he did come back with injury, and you got him on a discounted price. I think one thing that you got to be wary of is someone like Bont, who's very capable of starting with a house, like a house on fire. He's not going to get discounted too much. So I think if you're looking to, all of a sudden pick him up for mid 500s, that just seems a little bit unrealistic with his capabilities. But just for me, I think, I'm able to get Bont, but I think I like some of the other options too much so to pick him straight away. That might change. Second off the bat, this is an interesting one. This was a player that really I didn't pick to start off with last season. But was someone I was definitely interested in. Someone I'm going to be interested in pre-season and opening round and the early stages if he does continue that form. But I'm pretty tempted to pick him. Is Hugh McCluggage. He was one that really went under the radar, I think, in previous years. He's definitely gone under the radar in all Australian conversations, but averaged 119.4 last year. Is uber consistent. I think has some issues when he gets tagged, doesn't score as highly, but he's one of those players that even if he does get tagged, does get even a low 100. He's just really consistent, really impactful by foot and can score. Do you think that there's going to be, what are your thoughts on McCluggage? But I think that the important question here is, Nathan, do you think that he will, continue this trend upwards with the likes of Neil not getting any younger and Dunkley being that kind of Mr. Fix-It man? He's not really your most damaging midfielder. It seems like the likes of the Ashcroft brothers and McCluggage are the way to go forward for the Lions, especially if they want to go back to back to back. But what are your thoughts on McCluggage as a pick?
Yeah, so I've tossed up McCluggage, but I just look back to that qualifying final. I know it didn't matter in the end because Brisbane got their revenge 3 weeks later in the grand final. But I just look back to that qualifying final and I just go, I think with everything that's going on with Lachie Neale, I don't think, in case you've been living under a rock, I don't think Lachie Neale is going to be that good this year. That's just a gut feeling. So I feel like that McCluggage is going to be Brisbane's best midfielder this year. And I feel like if sides are going to go after one of those Brisbane midfielders, I think it is going to be McCluggage they go after. Purely because not only can he win his own ball, but he can have a real damaging impact forward of centre. I think he kicked 4 goals in the grand final. And Geelong tried to tag him, but I think that was a perfect storm, that grand final, because I think Brisbane got a taste of what Geelong were going to do 2 weeks earlier in the qualifying final. And I think I said this to you, Thomas, at the grand final once Brisbane sort of started kicking away, that I think that was the worst possible matchup for Geelong, purely because I think Brisbane saw how they were going to try and take away stuff, and it basically gave Brisbane a open book as to what Geelong were going to try and do if they met again. So they were well prepared for what was going to come on grand final day, and obviously you saw what happened. But I feel like that, McCluggage is going to get all that extra attention this year. So I personally myself won't start with him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is a top 8 midfielder. But I just have a little bit of questions around who the taggers are going to send to try and stop that Brisbane midfield. I feel like McCluggage is going to be first choice purely because he has struggled with it in the past. And generally, those are the types of players the taggers go after. So, I won't be starting McCluggage, but if he proves me wrong, well, he proves me wrong.
Yeah, I think he is spot on there. I think there is that massive risk that teams do pay a lot more or closer attention to him. I think at the end of the day,
it'll be either him or Will Ashcroft that I think will cop the taggers.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think Ashcroft and McCluggage are the ones in particular that are going to be in trouble with the tag. I think, Neil is past his prime, and I think, look, it's the proof's in the pudding with Neil. If you tag him, he shuts down completely. He's not really good with the tag at all, but I think there's a lot of preseason distraction to keep him busy, and I don't think we'll see the best of him next year. Dunkley is not worth tagging. He's not as damaging as the other two, and he's the tagger for Brisbane. McCluggage and Ashcroft, I think, is going to be interesting watch. That's half the reason why I think McCluggage and Asterix for my team, because I can easily pivot to like Dacos or whatnot, and I think McCluggage is someone that I have as an Asterix is more of a unique pick than anything, and is a close watch, because I think if the attention does go to Ashcroft. And I don't think Neil is going to get completely disregarded either. I think teams will still do their due diligence on Neil. But if McCluggage
it's such
can
a
get
strong
away,
midfield.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if McCluggage can get away with the tag most weeks, then he's going to score quite nicely. The next player, these next two players actually are sub 600k, so I guess that you're not uber premiums, but The next one is Errol Goulden, who definitely should be, 600 plus if he had played his best footy. Obviously, had that really, really nasty ankle injury that really didn't make his 2025 that great. Only played the 10 games, but I think the one that stands out for me, he still averaged over 100, which is quite impressive in that small sample size. But I think having watched some Swans games, he just dictates the play like so much. I think with Goulden, the players love the ball in his hands. He's such an elite user of the ball. It's him and Blakey that seem to run the show down there. Goulden, similarly to Dunkley in a way, plays. Oh, maybe not so much Dunkley, but I can't think of another player off the top of my head. But yeah, Goulden seems to be not a fix-it person, but just someone that can basically have, rather than having a set position on the field, can basically, it's like Dean Cox has gone, all right, Goulden, you can go where you want, when you want, and just basically track the ball. I think he's so impactful everywhere you go. And I remember watching a game last season where one of the commentators on, I think it was Fox Footy, basically said Goulden is that kind of dictator of the play, and he basically doesn't directly demand what's happening, but kind of indirectly has his presence where, it's felt by all the players, and he kind of dictates a lot of where the ball transition goes through that Swans midfield. What are your thoughts on Goulden? Obviously, he's a very nicely priced player, so I guess you can't really go wrong unless he, has an early season injury. Is there anyone else that you would think could be a better priced option than Goulden in regards to maybe value? But what are your thoughts on Goulden altogether?
Yeah, no, I love the Golden pick. I think he's Sydney's version of Scott Pendlebury, to be honest. They just put him
Yep.
where they need him,
Yep.
and he gets the job done. How could you not have Nick?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's one that, I mean, I could afford him, but Dacos, yeah.
I will just cut you off there.
Yeah.
Obviously being a Collingwood supporter, Nick Dacos is obviously first picked every year, because I think it's just you can't go wrong with him.
Yeah.
If I was not biased, I probably wouldn't actually pick Nick this year.
Yeah.
I probably would look down towards those 500k guys. But yeah, you can't go wrong with Goulden. I think if I didn't have Nick, I think that would definitely probably be one that I would strongly consider going down to Goulden.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with him. I think he's at a discounted price as well. A
Yeah.
bit Goulden.
Nah.
I think he's probably 40 or 50k cheaper than what he should be. So yeah,
Yeah.
get on board.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. The final kind of premium player. Look, my team name was named after this man for a couple of years, Jack Steele. I was pretty gutted as a Saints supporter when this man left. I think the main reason I picked him is not necessarily from a bias perspective. I think he's really going to flourish in that D's midfield. I think it kind of, the writing was on the wall a little bit. It was a bit of a surprise initially, but thinking about it now, when you lose Petrarca and Oliver in one trade period, you've got to have some leadership in there, and Steele's the perfect fit. Plays as hard as Petrarca and Oliver does, and is a really good two-way runner. I think that the biggest knock coming from someone who's watched most of his games is how he's going to bounce back from, well, not necessarily how he's going to bounce back from his injuries, because we saw that at St Kilda, but how he's going to go on a new side with that injury cloud over his shoulder. Like, he's obviously had those shoulder complaints and knee complaints in the past, which really seem to have derailed a good score. I think the one good thing about Steele is he's very consistent. You know what you're going to get from him. And I think the benefit of this is, and the reason I've got him in is, I don't think he's going to get worse for the Ds. I can only see him getting better. There's going to be more ball that goes through him. I think one reason why he really dropped down in scoring at St Kilda was obviously he got pushed out of that midfield group, and we wanted the ball in Naz's and Sinclair's hands in particular. And I think Windhager's kind of improvement in the last 6 months hadn't helped Steele's cause at all. But I think that the base of it, at the end of the day, he's a player that, he gets the first ball and he's a distributor out to your runners. And I think you've got your best ruckman going around in Max Gawn tapping the ball down to Steele. You can't go wrong. So I think he's going to get a lot more of the first-hand ball, whereas at St Kilda he was competing pretty hard because Marshall's not your classic tap ruckman, so he wasn't getting first use a lot of the time, and there seemed to be a lot of disconnect in that midfield group in general. So yeah, I think he's going to flourish at the D's, to put it simply, and he's a really good leader that's going to help the likes of, Harvey Langford. I know there's a few teams out there that have Harvey Langford in their side for Supercoach. I think, yeah, Steele's not going to play anywhere else other than the midfield for the D's. I think that's one thing that I can put my money on. And yeah, I think we'll really benefit from someone like Gorn tapping the ball down. What's your thoughts, Nathan, obviously on someone that's not biased and Kilda supporter, so coming from more of a neutral perspective, what are your thoughts on Steele in general? Do you reckon he's a good pick, or do you reckon, look, he's at 500k essentially, so he's cheaper than normal, but do you reckon there's a reason for that he's that cheap?
Yeah, I think he fell out of favour with Ross, to be honest. I think Ross was more looking towards his paycheck at the end of the year, and I think he was just said, I think the writing was on the wall for Steele. So yeah, I think he can quickly bounce back. Yes, he is underpriced. I can't see why he'll go wrong unless he gets injured. The other one that I've actually got there at the minute, I don't know if this is a blast from the past, but much the same thing. I actually think Clayton Oliver could have a big impact at the Giants.
Priced at 500, yeah.
He's
same
500k, so he's basically the same price.
Yeah.
I think he can have a massive impact up there at the Giants. So I know they've got Tom Green there, but I feel like a bit like Jack Steele. I think the writing was on the wall for Melbourne. Personally, I think they kept him 12 months too long, and him and Petrarca. I still maintain that I think they should have moved them on last summer, not this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think getting out of that Melbourne environment, I think it can only help Oliver.
Yep.
So at this stage, I'm happy to take the risk on him, but again, that's very flaky. Like, that's really flaky, that Oliver one. I think if you're gonna toss between the two, I think Steele's definitely the safer option. But yeah, at this stage, I've got Oliver there, but I don't think you can go wrong with Steele.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. So that rounds out my kind of premium-based players. The next two are 2 or 4 players that are in that 300 to 400k range, which, present massive value and massive upside. But as we caution at the start of the video, I think it's one to be really careful of, that you don't go too nuts on it and pick 6 to 8 300k players, because at that price you're wanting them to make money or be a season-long keeper and basically get a premium on a budget. The 2 players are in fact Hayden Young, which is priced because he's kind of bounced back from that injury, and Darcy Parish, which for 334k, only played 3 games. He's had a horror run of injuries in the last kind of 2 seasons, realistically. Hasn't really had a fair crack at it. Hayden Young, I think he's really important for that Freo midfield, because Brayshaw and Sarong really do play quite similar. They're your nuggety kind of midfielders. I think Brayshaw probably has a bit more aerobic capability of getting up and down the ground, whereas Young is that kind of defensive midfielder that can kind of slingshot forward and really put some damage on the scoreboard. Maybe not as consistent as the other two for Supercoach scoring, but at that price is really enticing. And I think with Freo's list profile can only go up from here. Darcy Parish, on the other hand, he's probably a more consistent midfielder. Word has gone around that he's basically been locked in that CBA rotation. And I think with the whole saga of Zach Merritt and where he's going to play essentially next year, I think you're looking more at the future if you're an Essendon supporter. I think Merritt's more. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Merritt plays more off half back next year and then plays Stints in the midfield. And if that's the case, Darcy Parish is the one to lead the charge there. I think the risk of picking him last season or in previous years gone by is you had Merritt in there, you had Shield in there as well, and they weren't really too willing to move around those players. And I think Parish is a really good player to lead from the front in that midfield mix. It's shown in previous years gone by. Granted, it's probably, he's not maybe the best player per se from an effective disposal capability or from an actual footballing capability, but from a Supercoach perspective, if he's locked in that midfield, he can score for fun quite easily, and he gets a lot of cheap ball on the outside of the midfield. So, what are your thoughts on these 2 options? I think my first question is how many is too many for these kind of 300 to 400k range players, and what are your thoughts on these 2 in particular? Have you got either of them in your calculations at the moment?
Well, I've actually got both of them.
Oh yeah, fair enough.
I've actually got both of them. So, yeah, I think out of all of the players, there's one more who I don't think you're gonna have.
Yep.
I've got four as well in that 300k price range.
Yep.
I feel like one of them you're gonna have. I don't think you're gonna have the other one though.
Yep.
But these two I definitely have got. Young, I think, is about 150 to 200k underpriced, and I think Parrish is probably about the same. Yeah, both just ravaged by injury, but they are clearly in their sides. Probably best 4 or 5 players.
Yep.
Fremantle, look, if I had to say no, I think Fremantle can go all the way next year. I
Oh
know
yeah.
that's a big call, but
Big statement early.
pardon?
Big statement early.
Oh, they can go all the way next year. I think they're in the prime. I think they're not crying out for anything. Fremantle, they were
Yep.
consistently one of the youngest sides on the field this year. They're only getting better. They're getting more experienced. I can't see how. I think if they don't make the top 6 next year, I think
Yep.
that's the failure. Um, so I think Hayden Young, if he can keep himself fit, will
Yep.
definitely be Fremantle's best player. And as for Darcy Parish, if he can keep himself fit, I think he's going to lead that Essendon midfield next year. So yeah, I think these two just pick themselves, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that it's a lower risk than other mid prices just based off the fact of their past scoring history. And I think, looking at my side now, that gives me a 7 deep midfield with Young and Parrish very capable of scoring consistent hundreds. So yeah, I'd say unless we hear otherwise of where they're positioned to play or they produce stinkers in the preseason, I think they're pretty locked in my side at this current time. So just rounding off the midfield, as we said, the rookies are, we're not going to talk about them as of today. Willem Dersma is my next in there. Then it goes coming from Richmond. These two in particular, I think I wouldn't be surprised if they both stay in my side. Dersma, I think, there's always that risk that we pay for this number one draft pick and they go to shit and it's like, well, we just burnt 100k there essentially. But Dersma has been quite impressive apparently in West Coast training, and he's touted to be the best Dersma out of the lot, if that's really good praise to go by. I mean, the other Dersmans haven't set the house on fire in SuperCoach scoring, but hopefully at West Coast he gets a lot of opportunity. Sam Cumming apparently has a very good footy IQ and is, I think, playing in defence so far. So if he has that and potentially maybe a half-back role rather than a lockdown role, could be quite enticing because, rookies playing pure mid either go one way, in my opinion, or one of two ways. They either do really well or really shit. So there's no really in between with these midfielders. On my bench, Jagger Smith, we all know what he's capable of. Had that ACL very early in the season and kind of ruined his 2025. He hasn't played, so priced accordingly. I think he's a lock in most sides at this current price. Will Brodie from Gold Coast and Freo essentially, but has now been into the Port Adelaide mix. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets opportunity in there now. Travis Boak is gone. Plays very similar to the likes of, like a Boak. Maybe not from an aerobic perspective, but yeah, maybe like an Ollie Wine, just crash and bash midfielder. He is younger than the older crop, so could help them, but who knows whether he gets games or not. And then Patrick Retschke, I think his name is, from the Tigers, another Tig mid. Close to basement price. Apparently he's a running machine, dominated time trials and whatnot. So an outside player that could do quite well. But as we'll say, we'll pay close attention to, Richmond, West Coast and the likes of those back end teams because I reckon they'll blood a lot of youth come round one. But moving on to the Rucks now. This is
the
an
other
interesting
one.
Oh yeah.
So if I can just the other one who I think you should consider too, if you can, is Dyson Sharp.
Yep. Who does he
from
play for?
Essendon.
Yeah. Yep.
Silky left footer got picked up in the draft. I think he was about pick 12, which I think was a few picks under where he probably should have gone. So I think he's at a bit of a discount price. And just one more as well, sort of backing up the the discussion of falling out of favour with Will Brodie. I think Finn McRae at West
Yes.
Coast as well.
Yep.
He just never could crack that Collingwood midfield. He's not going to have that same competition at West Coast.
Yeah, exactly
He was always one that was too good for the VFL, but never good enough for the AFL.
Yeah.
So I feel like a fresh start for him at West Coast. He might finally, he might finally unlock that potential. So they're sort of two other guys who you could consider as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. Finn McRae is actually in my forward line. He's DPP eligible and could be one that is a really good rookie to have. But looking at the ruck line, this is, I reckon going to be almost the most interesting topic come round one, purely based on the fact that of this new ruck rule. I guess, Nathan, you can go a little bit more into depth about what this ruck rule entails, but it essentially, from my understanding at least, it assists those more athletic type ruckmen at centre bounce, which was a big reason why St Kilda got DeConning, because of that whole reason about, bigger bodies in the ruck not being as influential as you kind of leaper ruckman. So with that in mind, I don't think it's going to... I had a chat with a mate off air about this who, not involved in the podcast, but I think he basically said he's a North Melbourne supporter, so was talking about Tristan Sherry, of course, but I don't think it's going to impact him too much, but maybe could impact a few points here and there. I don't think it's going to deter anyone from picking your Grundy, Sherry, and Gawn. But at this stage in time, just because I had to save a bit of money because I wanted to have the two 600 plus midfielders, I've gone, first of all, Luke Jackson. He's the one that's kind of got an asterisk next to his name. I'm not overly confident because I know what Sean Darcy can do, but just how much better Freo look with Jackson in the ruck full-time. When he does play full-time ruck, he's guaranteed to score 120 plus. He's, so dominant as a sole ruckman. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Freo do decide to go down that path of just letting Jackson play full-time ruck. And the other one I think that really struggled last season because of the rules where essentially the bigger ruckman can just block those athletic type ruckmen in the contest, in a ruck contest, is Tim English. He's 600k. Look, he's been so dominant in SuperCoach beforehand, but just really struggled, I think, last season in particular. I think he can have a really big bounce back here, and at 600k is quite affordable. And then to finish off the ruck line, just briefly, Liam Reedy from Freo. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets early games as well, or is Carlton's number one ruck. Obviously, with TDK going to my boys, and then what's the other guy's name? The names escape me, but essentially the other ruckman from Mark Pitney from Carlton. Look, I'd say Reedy's almost a better ruckman than Pitney. What are your thoughts
definitely.
on? Yeah, and I think he's, with DPP Reedy in particular, that could be quite a useful money maker to have. What are your thoughts on these two ruckmen in particular? And how do you think at the end of the day, I've seen people pick your classic Gawn, Sherry, Brodie Grundy, I could see being quite a good unique considering how dominant he was for about a 10-week block last year. What are your thoughts on these two ruckmen in particular? And how do you think this new rule is going to impact ruck in general?
Yeah, well, I'll start off by saying the new ruck rule. So basically, the ruckman can no longer cross the centre line before the ball's been thrown up. So basically, what it's the sort of the way that it's meant to be is that it's meant to bring in those more athletic type ruckmen. So like your DeConning, your Jacksons, those types of guys. So I'm not saying that those old lumbering ruckmen are going to be diluted they are going to be negated in a way. So I guess there's always a 12-month sort of transition period where you're sort of not sure how a rule change is going to, potentially impact positions and players. So, at this stage, I've also got Tim English in the side. I think he's underpriced, and I think I do agree with you. I think he's one that will benefit from the rule change. And The second ruck spot, I don't know who I'm going to go with the second ruck spot at this stage, but I will say, as we always say every year, please don't, unless there is a massive standout, please just pick 2 premium ruckmen. Don't go for a 300k ruckman and hope that they're going to turn into a max scorn. The likelihood of it happening is not very high, so just pick the 2 premium ruckman and move on with your life. Otherwise, you'll be splitting hairs.
Yeah. Nah, I do
throughout
agree.
the
I think,
year trying to get in one of them. So, at this stage, I've got Tim English in there. The second one, I haven't decided yet.
Yeah, nah, fair enough. I think that's going to be a hotly contested topic with Ruckman come round 1. But to finish off with the forward line, we'll keep this one brief because, in my opinion, there's probably not that many good options this season that stand out. First off the block, Harry Sheasel. If I can spell his name as a forward, not a ruck. He's a standout, now eligible as a forward. I think regardless of how you look at it, he's so far ahead of the other options. Nick Martin would probably be the next option down in Petrarca, but obviously Martin's out with that ACL, so he gets negated straight away. You look Rankin, I'd say he's one that you can get cheaper with how his role is. But yeah, Sheasel, I think it'd be interesting to see where he plays his footy next year. I would hope to think it's pure mid rather than a high half forward role. Or, classic halfback or stints in halfback if he does get tagged. I think he does play his best footy as a pure mid. I think that high half forward experiment that Clarko's got him going, probably not the best in my opinion. And I think he could be similar to Naz in the fact that plays full-time mid when he gets tagged, throw him behind the ball, get a few cheap touches and go from there. Sam Flanders, I think he's going to be by far and away, hopefully the best pick going around or the most obvious pick. He should be in most people's sides. He's going to play pure time mid. He was half the reason why Steele was out the door with his dominance in that midfield. I think Flanders is going to be close to our number 1 mid other than Naz. Having watched him play at the Suns, he's very clean, good with the ball. Look, the only reason why he wasn't playing midfield at the Suns was because you got Raul Anderson ahead of him. I think he's going to dominate in that spot there. I don't see, too many things otherwise. And I think because we have Naz in there, I think Flanders probably doesn't get a tag because he's more of your defensively minded midfielder. Then it goes down again in price to Adam Treloar, which I thought he was initially high 300s, but low 300s is half the reason I picked him. We all know what he's capable of. He was, when he was fully fit, he was a premium midfielder for the Dogs, All-Australian. Look, he's had a treacherous run with injury, and I think the biggest risk with picking him is if he has another soft tissue early on after he's strung a few good games together, or if the Dogs decide to completely change that mix and make Treloar a higher forward. I think if he does play pure time mid, pick him straight away. If he does end up being a hybrid half forward, I think there's merit in not picking him because, as a high half forward, he's pretty useless, whereas, he does his best work as a mid. So I think he's a no-brainer as long as he's fit. I'd say if you hear news that there's been issues with him preseason, I would go away straight away because he's got, hamstrings made of string, as Nathan probably is well aware of when he played at Collingwood. I think he's very injury prone. Then it goes cheap again. Matthias Philippou, I think people were hot on him last season, then he never got a full crack at it. He's priced cheaper again at 168k. I think he's a no-brainer. Look, I don't think he'll play full-time mid. He'll play that hybrid high half forward role. But I think, fingers crossed, Max King gets over the line in the early rounds. But I think if we can rejig that forward line and really help us, all of a sudden Mitch Owens and Philippou don't become your targets 2 and 3. Philippou almost becomes a real uneasy matchup for opposition defenders because of his height. I think the reason why he struggled a lot in that half forward role last year was because we had no one, and Cooper Sharma was the number 1 forward, then Owens and Philippou in that order. So Philippou often copped a pretty bad defender to come up against. So I think as long as we've got a pretty fit and firing forward line, I could see Philippou being very, very dangerous in there. Then rounding off, Pod Marshall was in my 12 days of Christmas SuperCoach discounts. He's one that I think is a lock. Either way you look at it, apparently there's been rumours he's training down back, so that could help his scoring a little bit. But if he does play forward, all he needs is a few bags of goals to really set him alight. And 147k, I think last year the year before when he was fully fit, he averaged, 55, 60 odd, which he'd take from that price. Those are I know Philippou and Marshall are your rookie price players, but I think both are capable of outscoring the average by quite a bit. What are your thoughts on this forward line, Nathan? I think the biggest question people might have is how are they going to structure it up? Because, as I said, if you look at the premium options, there's not many to go by, and then it drops quite significantly after that. The forward line is also quite a volatile position because scoring's not as consistent. But what are your overall thoughts on how the forward line stacks up?
Yeah, well, I agree with you on Harry Sheasel. I think he just picks himself, to be honest. I'm still happy to give Petrarca another chance.
Mm-hmm.
Much like Oliver, I think Melbourne kept him 12 months longer. I guess the question with Petrarca is what's his role going to be?
Yeah.
He's flaky as well. Like, like Oliver is. I think they probably both won't be in my final side.
Yep.
Come March. But
Yep.
at this stage, I'm happy to. Flanders, yeah, I agree with they're underpriced. I've actually gone Jordan De Goey.
Oh yeah, that was another one I was going to mention.
Who's 321,000. He's absolutely flying on the track. Has not missed a training session all summer. Recently became a father for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
We saw what a preseason can do for him in 2023 when he was basically full beast mode for a lot of that year, other than when he decided to destroy that young West Coast kid, forgotten his name now, but when he knocked him out. The other one who in there as well, Jamara.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard good reports out of saying that mentally he's sound, he's good, but again, like Petrarca, very flaky. Philippou, I think he's probably 200k, 300k underpriced. I think he's had a wretched run with injury as well. And I've probably got at this stage, I've probably got Ugle-Hagan in that Todd Marshall one, but seeing how much cheaper Todd Marshall is than Ugle-Hagan for that 70k, I probably would rather Todd Marshall than Ugle-Hagan. So, yeah, I can't disagree with that forward line. I think most forward lines are probably going to be pretty much the same.
Yeah, I do agree. De Goey's one that, does interest me at that price. I don't think I got the balls to do Young, Parrish, Treloar, De Goey all in one hit, considering my flex is going to be mid-price as well. De Goey, I think it'd be one of De Goey and Treloar. I think as long as Treloar stays fit, I think he's maybe more consistent than De Goey, but I think having watched some Pies games, that's what they were crying out for in that midfield. I think that explosiveness of De Goey was what they missed desperately at times. And when he did show it in patches last season, that was, I think, a really positive thing for the Pies. So, yeah, hopefully for your boys, they bounce back strongly. But just to round off the team, for the rookies, Finn McRae, as Nathan said, we both had this chat multiple times when he was a rookie price for Pies. He was one that could get a fair crack at the Pies. And yeah, as Nathan said before, was way too good for VFL. Will get 30 odd like his brother, or however he's related to Jackson McRae. I think he's one that can get the opportunities at West Coast and score accordingly. May not be the benefit of the Eagles, but definitely could see him getting 30 odd disposals on a more consistent basis at the Eagles, just with where they're at from a developmental point of view. And then just running the players off, Sid Draper's one that I was surprised he's still this cheap, considering he's played 10 games, but they were all a sub essentially. So his price was going backwards at times in 2025. But yeah, I think the one thing that I noticed when I watched the Crows bow out in straight sets in the final, they've still got a lot to learn, and I don't think they're at a stage yet where they can, put all their eggs in their basket and go for a grand final and go for broke. They're still quite a young side, and Sid Draper, when he went on as a sub, I think was quite impressive, and I think added some dynamic into that midfield mix. I guess the big question with him is how does he look like in a full game rather than a 20-minute period? So, yeah, that's one to watch. But Draper, that price, I guess you can't go wrong if he plays. And then to round that off, Dev Robertson, who I believe was playing for the Lions before he got delisted.
Yeah,
look,
correct.
never really had a fair crack, same as a lot of these other rookies. Played in a really talented Brisbane lineup. You look at a West Coast, all of a sudden he looks quite enticing. You know, a lot of these players, especially at the Eagles, a lot of the rookies score quite well. So I guess you can't really go wrong. I know another one, Cooper Tyler Duff, I think his name is, from the Eagles. I believe he's a ruck forward, like a Jackson type of player. He was one I was contemplating, but at 190k, when you got Marshall there, is 50k cheaper in a better side. I think you probably go that direction. And just to finish off before we wrap it up, I know this video's gone for quite a while, but is Sam Draper is my flex at the moment. Playing as a ruck forward, look, I think the caveat straight away is I wouldn't pick him as a ruck. I'd only pick him as a forward. I put him as a flex just because it gives me that flexibility of when you've got people on the bye and that kind of idea with the flex position. But Draper, I think the big upside with him is when he did play, looked really impressive. Before he left the Dons, he was Dons' future and whatnot. Had that horrendous Achilles injury. I remember watching. I was in Shepparton when that game happened against the Eagles, and you could just see him look absolutely distraught. That Achilles was in two pieces by the end of that game, and he looked really positive in that game beforehand. I think, look, if McInerney was still there, I probably wouldn't pick him, but he's going to be the number one ruck for the Lions. He's got a really good midfield to tap to, which is going to really complement him, I think. And Draper is one of those confidence players where if he starts well, he's just going to increase in confidence. And we've seen him, have these moments, the Dons, where he's just taken the ball at the ruck, run, 200 meters and scored a goal solely. And I think the Lions is a really good fit for him. I think they've got a good mix of youth and the old folk down there, and I think that's going to really, boost his development and really show what he's capable of. Because I know from a St Kilda supporter perspective, we actually, wanted him at the Saints as well. So I think we're going to see the best out of Draper next year and a really good Lions outfit. What are your thoughts on the flex position, Nathan? Who's your thoughts on this one? Do you reckon you're going to go for a budget rookie player, or do you reckon it's a spot for a mid-pricer?
No, I mean, I think the Goey's the perfect flex player, to be honest.
Yeah.
One of those speculative picks. I think Draper or the Goey would probably be the flex by the end of my sort of March thingy. Just because, I think Sam Draper will end up being number one ruck at Brisbane if he can keep his body right. So, I think that's a good buy. But, I can't disagree with that team. Obviously, the rookies are, to be determined. But, I think most of the premiums are pretty good. So, strap in.
Yeah. It's interesting because this is probably one of the more locked in, round, how many iterations we're going to have before round one. But I'm pretty happy with how this side looks on paper. Yet to be seen when it actually happens. So that's all we got time for today in today's episode. We were going to review two of the sides we got sent through on Facebook, but because this recording's gone just under an hour, we don't want to bore you for too long. So we're going to try and condense these episodes a little bit more so I don't go past the hour mark and ramble on a little bit too much. But we'll push those, at least these two reviews, till next episode. What I'll do is I'll post on Twitter throughout the week if you do want to send your teams through for us to review on video. We'll more than happy to give you feedback online, but we can give you a full-blown in-depth review on the video, whether we do it as a standalone video depending on how many people send in their videos, or we put it on to the back end of another video we've got in store for pre-season. And the last thing is, before we wrap it up, I think I'll mention it briefly at the start of the episode. We're looking to change things up from a classic perspective, as Nathan isn't too much into the classic scene. So one thing that we are most likely going to follow through on is we're going to put through a community team on Twitter. So it'll be the SuperCoach mates SuperCoach team, essentially, that will be run by Nathan. So what we'll do is we will potentially pick it live on YouTube when, not necessarily now when the gold pick is out, but when the official website opens, and we'll put a league together and whatnot. And then essentially each week we will give you free reign on what trades you want to do. So we'll leave it up to you to comment what trades you want, and what options you want to go for, and see how far or how high we can make the community team go, because essentially we will have some input, but essentially what I'll do is I'll put the trades to a vote, and then the highest vote we'll do regardless, and we'll show proof on video or whatnot that we're not just picking our own top side. That'll be my side entirely, but yeah, we'll pick a side on Twitter. Maybe we'll have some fun with it and put some speculative picks through and see how far we can make it from a community's perspective. But other than that, I hope you have a good start to 2026. We will not see you until the new year, and we'll see you for the next one.